तले स्वयं रूपा पदा मह्यं ददान्ति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सर्वनाथामितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादा सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांशं हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone for joining today. Today we will see a quick overview of the chapter 5 partially that we saw last week, and then we will move ahead with the chapter 6. For those of you who have joined after a break, I just will give you a quick recap where we are so that you can connect to the session. It's primarily we are reading from the Bhagavatam book. So we have been seeing the Canto 2, we saw Canto 1 fully in sequence. So then we started seeing Canto 2. So in Canto 2, Shukadeva Goswami began to answer the questions of Parikshit Maharaj about what is the ultimate duty of a person who is about to die. So in the first 3 chapters of this particular Canto 2, Shukadeva Goswami explained how the ultimate duty of a person who is about to die is to practice Bhakti Yoga. So after answering, he also proved by comparing it to other paths. He compared Bhakti Yoga with Ashtanga Yoga. He compared Bhakti Yoga with demigod worship. He compared Bhakti Yoga with Karma Kanda sacrifices. He also compared the Bhakti Yoga process with sense enjoyment. So in this way, he compared every Bhakti Yoga with every other process and then validated how Bhakti Yoga is the better process for the sake of achieving ultimate destination or ultimate happiness in life. In this way, in the first 3 chapters, he proved the superiority of Bhakti Yoga in comparison with other processes. And then he also compared, he started explaining about the glories of Bhakti Yoga, how the process of Bhakti can produce the supreme goal of life, which is love of God. After that, then the sages asked, the sages of Naimisharanya asked that, what are the other questions that Parikshit Maharaj asked to Shukadeva Goswami? So in chapter 4, then Shukadeva Goswami for the first time began offering prayers because initially he was anxious to answer Parikshit Maharaj. So he just answered Parikshit Maharaj without actually offering his prayers. So then he started offering his prayers, and after offering prayers in the chapter 4, in chapter 5, he began to explain, like Sukha Goswami began to explain about the conversation that happened between Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj about the questions that Parikshit Maharaj asked him for chapter 4. So, in essence, in chapter 4 of Canto 2, Parikshit Maharaj asked, please explain about the creation of the universe. So, to explain that, Shukadeva Goswami is quoting the conversation between Narada Muni and Brahmaji. So, Narada Muni asked questions, the same question to Brahmaji once in Satyaloka. Brahmaji, please explain about the creation of this universe. How is this universe created? What is this universe depending upon? What are the ingredients of this universe? How is it destroyed? How is it maintained? How is it created? Please explain the details of this universal creation. So Brahmaji began to explain. So that's what we saw in the last week. So just because it is a technical section, I am again going through it once more in somewhat brief, and then we will go to the next chapter. So if you have any questions from the previous week session, at the end of this recap, you can ask those questions. So we saw how people have so many opinions, like materialist people say or scientists say that how everything came from a big bang, and Bhagavatam explains a different kind of account of creation. So that's what we are going to see. Who's all these different types of Vishnus that we saw? So what are their roles and where it all begins? So from the question 3 of Narada Muni was Yata Srishtam. How is it all created? Kindly, if you are, kindly mute yourself if you are not. So, verses 21 to 35, Brahmaji is going to answer about the question Yata Srishtam, which means how is the universe created? So there are two types of Srishti. One is called Karana Srishti, the other one is called Karya Srishti. So verses 21 to 31 will be speaking about Karana Srishti. Karana Srishti means the ingredients are created. And then 32 to 35, the ingredients are put together. So it's the Karya Srishti, 32 to 35. So now we will see Karana Srishti. Karana Srishti is creating all the different ingredients. So before everything begins, Mahavishnu is lying in the Karana ocean. This is in a particular section of the whole spiritual sky. If you assume the spiritual sky is it's like 3/4 of the spiritual sky is the spiritual world. 1/4 of the spiritual sky is the material world. So it is just a portion of the whole creation. So one side, like how in a city we will have a small section of the city as jail. So something like that. So 1/4 of the spiritual sky is designated for the material creation. So there, Mahavishnu is lying down on the causal ocean, which is between the material and the spiritual worlds. And in that causal ocean, he just lies down, and he now the whole material sky is one thing, and in that sky now there is, in one sense, the universes are not there. Then the universes began to pour out from the body of Mahavishnu, and then Mahavishnu actually glances at those universes that he is producing from his bodily force. Once when his glance falls on the individual material universes, which are in the state of pradhana, they get kala, that is time, jiva, and karma and swabhava through the glance of Mahavishnu. So in that way, once this begins, then because now there is time factor, the pradhana becomes transformed into Mahatattva. And in the factor of time factor influence, the three modes, which is already dormantly present in pradhana, becomes active with the time. The first mode to be like predominant is Sattva. So that is when you call the material universe in the state of predominantly in the mode of Sattva is called as Mahatattva. And then the universal shell transforms from the predominantly in the mode of goodness, it transforms to the predominantly in the mode of passion. Then it is called as in a state of Sutra Tattva. Then from there it becomes predominantly in tamas. Then it is called as the ahankar. This is not the individual false ego that we have. This ahankar, in the Vedic terminologies, the same name is used for multiple things. So we don't need to confuse. So this ahankar here refers to the universal shell, the universal egg, which is currently in a which is currently in a manufacturing stage. At this point of manufacturing, it is predominantly the mode of tamas. So the whole universal shell is called as ahankar here. And from this state of ahankar of the universal shell, which is predominantly in the mode of ignorance, is produced three modes of nature, which is goodness, passion, and ignorance, because there is not purely, nothing is pure. But the goodness in this world, that's why we don't consider it as absolutely goodness, because it is mixed with it itself. It has its source in ahankar. It has its source in tamogun. That is why we don't consider the material goodness as pure goodness. That's why we say shuddha sattva as the transcendental goodness. So this, from this goodness, passion and ignorance, there are many things created, which is like the Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Dravya Shakti, or Adhidaiva, Adhyatma, and Adhibhuta. All these three categories are created. And from the Adhidaiva, which is the Jnana Shakti, comes mind and the 10 sense devatas. These are principles of the sense devatas. Prana, 10 senses, intelligence, 5 tanmatras and elements. So we saw how the 5 tanmatras or elements are created last week. From sound comes ether, from ether comes touch, touch to air, from air to form, form to fire, from fire to taste, to water, to smell, to earth. So in this way, all the 5 subtle sense objects and their corresponding 5 gross sense objects are created. And after this, now all the individual principles are created. So now they all have to be put together for the life to begin, for the universe to become habitable. So Karya Srishti is that thing which kind of brings together all the elements. All these elements actually are created, but they are unmixed state. So the Lord sends His compacting energy to bring it all together. It is like you prep for cooking. You get all the individual veggies cut, you all get all the herbs cut, you collect all the individual spices, you keep everything ready, but you have to put together. So you have to begin the fire and then you put together things in a certain order, and they take time to cook. So similarly here also, Lord sends the compacting energy to bring them together, but it takes 1,000 years for the universal egg to come to a shape where it is inhabitable. So once that stage comes, then Garbhodakshaya Vishnu enters and actually gives life to the universal in a sense. So he begins manifesting as Virat Rupa, and from his navel Brahmaji comes, and so in this way everything else is manifested. So he manifests his universal form as the basis of creation in one sense. So that universal form is kind of can be seen in different ways. To be imagined as the Svargaloka, Bhurloka, Purloka, or Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras. So in this way, different planetary systems are positioned in different parts of the universal form of the Lord. So this is where we stopped last week. So next chapter is going to be how this universal form, or this particular personality, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who is the basis of the universal form, is the Purusha who's explained in the Vedic literature, specifically Rig Veda, which considers Purusha Sukta. So Purusha Sukta also offers some prayers, and Bhagavatam also similarly offers similar kind of prayers. So there is a confusion in the Vedic literature that Purusha is Lord Shiva or Lord Vishnu. So that is why when Bhagavatam is glorifying Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, that's why Prabhupada is terming this particular chapter as Purusha Sukta confirmed. There is confusion in the Rig Veda about who is that Purusha. The Purusha is not named there, it's just called Purusha. So some people say it is Lord Shiva, some people say it's Lord Vishnu. But here Bhagavatam is clearly saying who is that Purusha by explaining that Purusha is the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who is the source of the universe. So that's why Srila Prabhupada has termed the next chapter as, named the next chapter as Purusha Sukta Confirmed. So before going into that, if any of you have any questions in the 5th chapter, we can take. Is it like kind of understandable so far? Some of you confirm, then I'll be more confident.
Yes, Haribol Prabhu.
No questions? Okay. Okay, so we go on to the chapter 6 for this week. So Brahma actually is continuing his answers.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, did we miss chapter 4 and 5?
That's what we saw all this time, right? Chapter 4 is Parikshit Maharaj is asking questions, and then Shukadeva Goswami offering prayers. Chapter 5 is the creation of the universe that we saw so far. That is
Okay.
chapter 5.
Okay.
Now, chapter 6 also, the conversation between Narada Muni and Brahmaji is continuing now. It is not yet over. So, chapter 5, the conversation began, and the chapter 6, it is continuing. So far, Narada Muni's question, out of Narada Muni's 6 questions, Brahmaji answered some of the answers, some of the questions. So, now he's going to continue to answer the other questions because he is going to answer in this chapter some of the 6th question where who is the material cause or the efficient cause of the universe, or answer to question 2, what is the yadadishtanam yad param, who is the, on what the universe is dependent upon. So all these different questions he is going to answer in this particular chapter 6. That is why this chapter is named as Purusha Sukta confirmed. I explained now how in the Rig Veda there is confusion, but Bhagavatam uses almost similar prayers to denote to Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So Prabhupada is using this opportunity to say, if you see in the Rig Veda uses the same prayers but does not say who is that Purusha. But Bhagavatam clearly uses the same prayers and uses the same prayers to offer it to Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So that means that Purusha is Lord Vishnu. That's what Srila Prabhupada's conclusion. That's why he is naming it as Purusha Sutta confirmed. So in this chapter, Brahma will answer different questions of Narada Muni, like who is the, or how the Lord is the material cause or the efficient cause of this universe, or the who's the shelter of this universe, on whom is this universe dependent upon. So all these 3 questions he is going to answer: question 6, question 2, and question 5. So he explains how the Lord is both the material and the effective cause of the universe, because material cause means all the ingredients come from him, and he only puts it all together also. Without him, say for example, how this example of potter and a pot is given. So potter collects the mud and then begins making the pot. So here the mud is the material cause and the potter is the efficient cause, whose reason for making that pot. But in the case of the universe, Lord Vishnu is the efficient cause as well as the Lord Vishnu is the material cause, because from him all the ingredients come, and he is the one by whose energy everything is put together and everything is made also. So he is everything. But in the case of material examples, you can see we may make something, but we are not the producers of the ingredients. So that is why here Garbhodakshay Vishnu is clarified as, or Lord Vishnu is clarified as, is the source of everything, both the material cause as well as the effective cause of the universe. And to prove that point, another Virat Rupa is explained. And that Virat Rupa explains how from the Lord everything comes. From the Lord comes the sense object, from the Lord comes the sense organ, from the Lord comes the Devata, from the Lord comes the Virat Rupa, from whose sense organ everything else comes. In this way, everything is coming from the Supreme Lord. Why they are explaining this universal form in the chapter 6 is to prove the point how the Supreme Lord Vishnu is the material cause and the effective cause of the universe. So that is the point we need to understand from this chapter. You may see a huge description of Virat Rupa again. So already in chapter 1 there was a Virat Rupa, and the last chapter there was some Virat Rupa, little bit explanation, and now there is a Virat Rupa again. Chapter 10 there will be a Virat Rupa description. So each Virat Rupa description has a different purpose. In chapter 1, what was the purpose of Virat Rupa explanation? Can someone kind of say?
For neophyte yogis to understand, see Lord as a material form.
Perfect. For him because there it is the object of meditation for a attached yogi, neophyte yogi. So that is why that Virat Rupa was described. So it has slight difference. But in the last chapter also we saw one Virat Rupa, little bit of the Virat Rupa description. That is to show how everything is like Garbhodakshay Vishnu is the basis of the universe. And in continuation with that universal form, now in this chapter what we are going to see, this universal form description is to show how Garbhodaksha Vishnu is the material cause, or not, like Mahavishnu is the material cause or the effective cause of the universe. That is why we are seeing this particular universal form. So I'm not going into the details of the universal form. It is the almost like the first 17 verses. It will be second how the seven dhatus are the seven Vedic meters, how the body of the Supreme Lord is active principle, how his hair and beard is the clouds, how his nails are the lightning, minerals and the metals, and his belly is the ocean, his bones are the mountains, his heart is the mind, his wheels are the great river and rivulets. So in this way, all these explanations are given to prove that he is the effective cause and he is the material cause. That is what is the point we need to understand from these 17 verses. And then Brahmaji is saying, oh, Narad Muni, don't think the Lord is only the owner of the material universe. There is a whole set of existence beyond this material universe. We are just speaking about this material cause and the ingredient cause, efficient cause, all these things. That is all only for the, that is all we are now currently speaking in respect to the material world. But understand there is also a spiritual world which is beyond this material creation, and he is the Lord of that spiritual world also, which is much more incomparable. It is completely spiritual, and it is much more vast than this particular material creation. So he is the Lord of even that spiritual creation. What to speak of just this material vibhuti. So that is why he is going to explain to Narad Muni how the Supreme Lord is the Lord of both the Ekpad Vibhuti, which is the material manifestation, and the Tripad Vibhuti, which is the spiritual manifestation. So that's what is the purpose of this particular section from 18 to 22. He will explain how in this whole spiritual world there is a small section of the material creation. So currently Brahmaji was explaining about this small material bubble, but he's saying, oh, forget Narad Muni, not just this material universe or manifestation, rather the whole spiritual sky, everything that man is existing is coming from the spiritual Supreme Lord. So that's why he's saying he is not just the Lord of the material world. Material universe is just the 1/4 of the creation. The spiritual world, which is deathless, fearless, and auspicious, he is the owner of that. There is no this material universe is made of ignorance, but the spiritual world is made of knowledge, chit and achit. And the Lord creates the material universe, but he is aloof from the material world. He is enjoying his pastimes in the spiritual world. And this is what is the gist of the verse 18 to 22. That how the Lord is the Lord of all the existence, not just the material creation, but also the spiritual world. After explaining that supreme position of the spiritual Supreme Lord, now he explains whatever he said in the first 17 verses by his own experience, and the first 22 verses by his own experience. How? I'm not just telling you out of theory, I have a personal experience of all this. So now he recounts how, when I appeared from the lotus of the which is formed sprouted from the navel of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, I could not see any ingredients for sacrifice. And everything that I wanted to perform, all the ingredients came from the body, Lord's limbs. So in that way, I personally understood from direct experience that how everything comes from the Supreme Lord. That the Supreme Lord is the origin of all the ingredients that we need, all that we see, everything comes from the Supreme Lord. So to corroborate that point, that how Lord is the source of everything, he is quoting his own personal experience in life. How when he was born, he could not find anything to perform the sacrifices. Finally, all the ingredients came from the Supreme Lord's limbs. So now he answers the other question of Narada Muni. Brahmaji is answering the other questions of Narada Muni. The other question is, who is the shelter of the universe? Brahmaji very clearly says, the Supreme Lord Narayan is the shelter of this universe. So Narada Muni's question was, on whom is the universe dependent upon? Brahmaji's direct answer is, only by his empowerment, only by the empowerment of Lord Narayan, I create, Lord Shiva destroys, and he himself maintains everything. So he kind of concludes that everything is happening because of the We are all doing our individual portfolios, but all of us are dependent on ultimately on God, Vishnu. So in that way, he has answered all the questions of Narada Muni. So he says, I have answered all your questions. So now he goes on to explain how it is not possible someone to understand the Lord completely, specifically by one's own power. It is not possible for anyone to understand the Supreme Lord. He says, I hold the Lord in my heart. That's why my words are never false. So accept what I say as truth. What I say is, even I cannot understand the Lord, although I am in the disciplic succession, filled with austerities and worship with Prajapatis and expert in mystic powers and self-realization. By my own individual strength, I cannot understand the Lord. I can only understand the Lord fully, or whatever level he uh, like manifests or he reveals by his mercy. So he says even the Lord cannot fully understand his own limits. As Ananta says, he is trying to recite the glories of himself, but he has never reached the end of it. So that is why he is saying nobody can understand the Lord fully. I, Shiva, you, nobody can ascertain the limits of spiritual happiness. Then what to speak of other demigods? Even greater people like we cannot understand what to speak of the lesser demigods. Still, so anyway, we cannot understand the Lord fully. We cannot glorify Him fully. So should we just not give it up? No, he says, still let us glorify His activities, though we cannot fully understand Him. Whatever we know, whatever is our understanding, whatever degree we understand Him, we know to glorify Him. Let us continue to glorify. That is the perfection of God. So, and then after speaking this, he explains some little more details or glorifications about the Mahavishnu. He says, you asked one question about who dissolute, how is it all destroyed? So he says, Mahavishnu without birth, one who is the source of everything, the soul of all beings, he creates, he maintains, and he destroys himself by himself in himself. So he says, he creates himself and he destroys himself in himself. Means he creates the universe, which is also his expansion from his body, so it is considered him. And then he himself destroys it and then takes it back within himself. So in this way, he creates, maintains, and destroys himself by himself in himself. And then he glorifies the qualities of the Lord as absolute truth, pure and without any material tinge. Just because he gives out material world or takes inside material world, he does not become infected or contaminated by material influence. How to know him? He says, oh, great thinkers who are completely free from material hankerings and who have controlled senses, only they can know him, not anybody else. And what is this zone of control? He says Karanodakshaya Vishnu is the first incarnation for this material universe. Is a master of eternal time, space, cause, effects, mind, elements, ego, modes, senses, universal form, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, the sum total of all living beings. Everything comes from Mahavishnu. Everything is his zone of control. And none of the material things are the Lord's Swarupa. Even though material things comes out of the Supreme Lord, that doesn't mean that is his only Swarupa. It is his expansion, may be considered as one of his Swarupa or considered as forms of the Lord, but he has his personal spiritual form. So, and then he says, now I have spoken so much in detail about Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, all these Purusha avatars. Let me also describe to you a little bit about Leela avatars. The Supreme Lord does not come to this material world just to create, maintain, and destroy this material world. He also comes to this material world to enjoy pastimes, attract the conditioned souls by exhibiting wonderful pastimes. So let us also see a little bit about the various incarnations of the Lord that comes to this material world, Narada Muni. I have so far explained to you about the different Purusha avatars. Now let me also explain to you about the Leela avatars. So in this way, Brahmaji is continuing to speak to Narada Muni. So he says there are so many Leela avatars that come to this material universe. So he says Varahadev, Kapil Dev, four Kumaras, or Rishabhadev, Matsya Avatar, Narsimadev, Naranarayan Rishi, Vamanadev, Parashuram, so Vyasadev, Ramchandra, Dhanvantri, Hamsavatar. In this way, he quotes all these different incarnations of the Supreme Lord. All kinds of categories are here: Shakti, Avesh, Avesh, Swayam, Prabhav, Prakash. All kinds of incarnations are in this list, and he quotes all of them and describes a little bit about every one of them. And then he says, no one can describe the glories of the Lord's greatness or the complete list of all his incarnations. He says, the Lord, as Anantasesh, is trying to glorify himself, but has not reached the limit of the Lord's glories. He says, Nantam vidamyaham ami munayo agrajaste maya bhalasya purushasya kuto avaraye. Gayan guna dashashata nana adideva sesho adunapi samavasyati nasya param. He says, Nantam vidamyaham ami munayo agrajaste. Nantam, I cannot, even Anantasesh cannot actually reach the limits of the Supreme Lord's glory. Yes, who can then know the Supreme Lord? Even Anantasesh cannot understand, then who can know? Nobody can know. No, the surrendered souls can know the Lord by His mercy. If the Supreme Lord has mercy upon a person, He can reveal Himself to that person. He says, Yesham Svayesha Bhagavan Dayed Anantaha Sarvatmana Shritapado Yadi Nirvilikam Te Dustara Matitaran Ticha Deva Mayam Nayesha Mamaha Mitidi Shwa Shrigala Bhaksha. He says, Yesham Sayesha Bhagavan Daye Dananda. That by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, and everybody can understand, or anybody can understand, and they can actually cross over. Te Dustara Matitaram Ticha Deva Mayam. Deva Mayam, the material energy, is not possible for anyone to cross over. But Te Dustaram, even that difficult material energy could be Atitaranti. One can completely cross over that ocean if the Supreme Lord has mercy and reveals himself. Once a person understands the Supreme Lord, then he crosses over. Then there is no ignorance which can touch him. So that happens only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. For that, one has to be nirvyalikam. One have to be surrendered soul, unpretentiously surrendered soul. Only then one can know the Supreme Lord. Yes, Suman, you want to ask something?
Prabhu, it is not clear to me how even the Lord cannot know himself.
In the sense, if you read the purport of that section, Prabhupada says, Ananda is glorifying, but the Lord's glories keep increasing.
Sorry, the voice got cut. Can you again repeat?
Okay. In that purport also, if you read, Prabhupada will explain how the Supreme Lord's glories are ever increasing. So Anantadev goes to the last item in the list. By the time he finishes, there is a new item which popped into that list. So in that way, as he goes on glorifying the Supreme Lord, his qualities are increasing more and more and more and more. So in that way, that eternally that glorification is going on. That is why we say it is limitless, because the Lord is so great that his glories keep adding, his qualities keep increasing.
It's like similar to what we find in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. Like Radha and Krishna, every time they see each other, their qualities keep increasing.
Same principle. So, and then Brahmaji also says the surrendered souls. Who are the surrendered souls who know the Lord? He says he gives a list of great personalities. He includes himself. He says, Narada Muni, you know the Supreme Lord, Lord Shiva, Swayambhuva Manu, Ambarish, Bhishma, Uddhava, Prahlad, Dhruva, Vidura, Arjuna, and many others were successful in attracting the Lord's mercy. Here, if you see, Narada Muni's name is already added in this list by Brahmaji. But beginning of the 5th chapter, if you see, he, as if he doesn't know anything, he comes to Brahmaji and says, "Oh Brahmaji, I see you are the greatest person in this universe. I don't see anybody else. You know everything. You are the main person for creating, maintaining, and everything. So, but why are you performing austerities if that is the case?" So in that way, he puts himself in a normal person's shoes and asks those questions, as if how a normal person will look at Brahmaji and think, "Oh, he is the all in all of this universe. He is the main person in this universe. He is the creator of the universe." Like that, one may think. That's why Narada Muni himself puts in that position and asks questions on our behalf. But now here you see that his real position is revealed. He is one of those surrendered souls who, by the mercy of the Lord, know the Supreme Lord. And Brahmaji says, "Oh, It's not that the list is like sealed and nobody can know in the future. No, anybody can know. Even lower persons can know the Lord by a devotee's mercy. If a person gets the mercy of the devotee, then by the mercy of the devotee, the knowledge about the Lord will be revealed. He says, Tevai vidanti aditaranti cha deva mayam stri shudra huna shavara pipapa jiva yadi adbhuta krama parayana shila shiksha stiriyak jana api kimu sutadarana. Even animals can understand what to speak of anybody else. He says, Stiriyak jana api. Even animals, those who are in the animal body also can understand. So in the commentary, I suppose like Gajendra is given. How Gajendra is in that body, but still he could retain the knowledge. So the knowledge of the Supreme Lord is not dependent on what kind of body one is in. Like Bharat Maharaj, he remembered the Supreme Lord's glories even when he was in the body of a deer. So he says, Tiryak Jana Apikimu Sutadharanaye. In that way he glorifies the mercy of the devotees, by whose mercy one can understand the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And then he goes on to glorify how the Supreme Lord, he establishes the Bhagavan as higher than Paramatma and Brahman. Somebody may say, oh, you're speaking about Supreme Lord, all I know is Brahman, or all I know is Paramatma. So he clearly classifies in the 47th verse. So he says, Paramatma, Brahman, Bhagavan, all are there, but Bhagavan is the highest aspect. He says, the Paramatma is eternally peaceful, fearless, pure. Brahman is full of unlimited happiness, free from grief, indescribable by words. It is the formless aspect of the Bhagavan. So he says Maya is completely ashamed, it cannot even stand before the Supreme Lord. So the above qualities of Brahman are seen more abundantly in Bhagavan. So in this way he glorifies the Supreme Lord Bhagavan, the personal form of the Lord, as the basis for Brahman and Paramatma in the 47th verse. And then he says 48, Jnanis and yogis give up their paths. So those who follow the paths of artificial mental speculation and meditation finally give them up, as Indra, the demigod of rain, forgoes the trouble of digging a well. Like if Indra is the demigod of rain, then why is there a need for him to dig a well? So he can just make it rain, and then he will be having water. So similarly, when a person has bhakti yoga, why will he go through the trouble of digging the well, like practicing the process of jnanis and yogis, jnana and yoga? So that's why he's saying that jnani and yogi also, once they discover path of bhakti, they give up. He says Bhagavan is the ultimate benefactor, who bestows the results of all processes. He says Bhagavan is the ultimate benefactor, not Paramatma or Brahman, who bestows the result of all process, yoga, jnana, and karma. Because Paramatma is kind of neutral. Brahman is, there is no reciprocation. So it is Bhagavan who is merciful. That aspect of mercy is more available in the Bhagavan aspect than Paramatma, and not available in the Brahman aspect. So even if the body is finished before perfection, the result is carried over by the Supreme Lord Bhagavan, because he is merciful. So this means that the devotees of the Lord should not perform or need not perform yoga or jnana for attaining the result. It is only the worship of the Supreme Lord can give everything. So finally, he is giving a summary of the whole chapters of chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7. Just to recap and completing for the day, we have 2 minutes to go. Chapter 5, he explained how first Narada Muni asked 6 questions. Oh, how is this universe created? What is it dependent upon? What is the shelter of this universe? What are the ingredients in this way? What are the symptoms of the universe? What is the cause of the universe? How is it maintained, destroyed? So in this way, he asked so many questions. And who is the Supreme? Are you the Supreme, or is there anybody else Supreme? So Brahmaji answered, I am not the Supreme. There is the Supreme Lord Vishnu. And then he explained how the universe is created, who is the source of it, who's the shelter of it, on whom it is dependent upon. All those things he explained. Then in the 6th chapter he explained how everything comes from the Supreme Lord, that how Supreme Lord is the material cause, efficient cause, and he is the shelter of the universe. He explained all these things. And then he also explained about Mahavishnu, and then said, I have spoken so much about Purusha avatars. Let me speak about Leela avatars. So in chapter 7, he spoke about various Leela avatars that the Supreme Lord takes in this material universe. All kinds of avatars description he gave. And then he said, oh, I can go on and on. Even Anantadev is going on, Anantasesh is going on and on, but he cannot reach the limit. So how can I? So understand that only the surrendered souls can, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, can know him. He gives a list and then says that this list is not exhaustive. Anybody can become by the mercy of devotees, and then glorified the aspect of Bhagavan because he is merciful. That mercy, that's why he is glorifying in the next section. Because that mercy is only available in the Bhagavan aspect. It's not in the Brahman or Paramatma aspect. So that's why he glorifies Bhagavan as the ultimate benefactor. A devotee having found the path of bhakti need not practice jnana or yoga. So now he is in these last 4 verses. He is going to summarize these what are these 3 chapters we saw, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7. He is going to summarize in this section and conclude it for Narada Muni. So he says, dear son, O Narada Muni, I have thus explained to you in brief about the Supreme Lord Hari, who creates all worlds and without whom nothing exists. So in what he said, who creates the universe? Supreme Lord. And without whom nothing else exists. And he says, this is the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam. So distribute this knowledge that I spoke to you, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam in essence, because by hearing this one achieves bhakti. It gives rise to bhakti in all living entities. So please describe this knowledge of about the Supreme Lord, which is not different from Srimad Bhagavatam, far and wide. And he says the importance of specifically understanding the creation pastimes. He says it is very important to understand not just the Leela avatars of the Supreme Lord. Don't think I gave you at the end a description of Leela avatars, that's what you have to go and distribute. Distribute the knowledge how the material universe is created, how the material universe is dependent upon the Supreme Lord. What is this material energy? How does it manifest? How is it functioning? Explain this knowledge because by understanding how the material energy works, one can actually gain release from the material energy. Specifically, knowing the material energy in relation to the Supreme Lord. Scientists are also trying to understand the material energy. And Bhagavatam is also saying you have to understand the material energy to gain release from this material universe. So is the both same? The difference is no, they both are not same. The difference is the scientists are trying to look at the material energy, thinking it is independent, thinking it has no other source, no other lord or master, seeing it as independent. That is their problem. But Bhagavatam is explaining the position of Maya or material energy in relation to the Supreme Lord. Because we are trying to understand it in relation to the Supreme Lord, we understand the purpose of its existence and we also understand how to cross over it. So that's why here Brahmaji is saying this importance of understanding the creation pastimes, understanding the dealings of the Supreme Lord and the material energy, or how we have to deal with the material energy. Mayam varnayato amushya ishvarasya anumodataha shrinvatah shraddhaya nityam maya atma namuhyati. It says, if one constantly describes Maya in relation to the Supreme Lord, Maya varnayato amushya ishvarasya anumodataha. If you do it in relation to the Supreme Lord, and anyone who remembers Maya or hears about Maya with proper faith, with its proper understanding and relationship with the Supreme Lord, then he will not be bewildered by the material energy. So that he knows how to overcome it. How does it work? So that he can overcome it by taking shelter of the Supreme Lord. So Maya Varanayato Amushya Ishwarasya Anumodataha Shrinvatah Shraddhyanitya Maya Atma Namuhyati. So with this we complete chapter 7. Chapter 8 is shorter, but I think I'm already over time. So we will see chapter 8 next week.
Haribol Prabhu, can I ask 2 short questions?
Yes, Prabhu.
First thing is,